Heyo Poke fans, my name is Quotable Notables and welcome to another video. Today we're going to go back in time a little bit. I wanted to talk about some vintage Pokemon cards and one of the rarest cards in my collection. So we're going back all the way to Neo Genesis. This is my first edition Neo Genesis Typhlosion. Opened this straight out of a pack. And what makes this a little bit rarer than your usual Typhlosion, we're just going to zoom in on this. Get it in focus there. There's the red dot next to the Neo Genesis symbol. So this is the Red Dot Typhlosion. It's very similar to the Red Dot Blastoise that we saw come out of the Unlimited base set. I have another example here for you of another card with the same kind of ink blob, ink stain, ink dot, ink spot, etc. They're also called hickeys. Here it is on the base set Grass Energy. So what happens to get that kind of effect is you have particles that result in spots or small dark areas on the printing sheets. So the Typhlosion here, only the first run of the first edition Typhlosions have those red dots on them. So they're incredibly rare. Most of the other cards that have these kind of factory print defects that are through no fault of the owner are worth more than their standard counterpart. Other examples we can see of this are the heart stamp Clefairy, which actually got its name because it was believed that a seller stamped the cards and put them back, repackaged the packs, and then people would open them and think they got this rare factory print. I don't know whether or not that story is actually true, but I do know that there's a PSA 8 graded version of the heart stamp Clefairy, which would lead me to believe that it is in fact a factory print defect and not this made-up story of some seller stamping the card, because if that were the case, the card would have been tampered with and wouldn't have received a PSA grade unless it slipped through the cracks. So any cards that are tampered with like that, they will refuse to grade because they're tampered with in the hopes that they'll be more valuable. So this is not that. And I've seen some people post online that they see things like this and think the cards are tampered with. Collectors want mint cards due to what PSA calls visual appeal. Historically, we've seen that the opposite is actually true. You'll see cards like this because they have these hickeys or ink blobs, is my preferred term. I call them ink blobs. They will receive a lower grade. Despite these cards receiving a lower grade due to PSA determining that they're less desirable because of these factory print defects, historically we've seen that they sell for a significantly higher price than their standard counterparts because they're rare. The Red Dot Blastoise is a great example. A PSA 8 sold for $290 and a PSA 9 sold for $525. One thing that bothers me about this is that PSA is incredibly inconsistent with their practices when it comes to Pokemon cards. So another example we see of this is the D edition Butterfree that has its own classifier. So if it, you'll see on the card, I'll display it, that the Butterfree, the first edition stamp, looks like a D instead of a 1. And that is appealing. People do collect that. But when it comes to the PSA grade for that card, having that D edition does not affect the grading of the card. Another example we've seen of this was, I found an Inksmear Haunter that had a stain classifier, which it is not. They should be classified as print defects. The other issue that I have is that print defects they have as a classifier, and these smaller defects, like the ink blobs, are not significant enough of a print defect to qualify for the print defect classifier. And we've even seen as far as the Cigar Stain Hitmonlee and the Inksmear Haunter not qualify for a long time for the print defect. So these cards are receiving lower grades than they should. And this company, who's supposed to be an authority on these cards, who absolutely has an effect on the value of the cards, is determining that they're of a lower grade than what they should be due to visual appeal, when to collectors, historically, we've seen this over and over, that these cards are appealing, if not more appealing than their standard versions. It should not affect the grade, and there should not be so much inconsistency with which the cards are graded. And there should not also be so much inconsistency for what cards do or do not qualify as a print defect. But for me, this card contains so much sentimental value that I'm not sure I'll ever get it graded, because it might come back as a 9 or even an 8. I've seen one go as low as a 7, and from my personal opinion, looking at the card, it was not deserving of a 7, and I'm certain that the ink blob on it played a significant role in it receiving a 7, especially with these Typhlosions, where they don't garner the same attention as the other errors, even though it's just as impressive an error, if not more so, than the Red Dot Blastoise, because of the position and style of the ink blob. It almost looks like it's part of the set symbol in a way. And you have the D Edition Butterfree, which has its own classifier, whereas you don't for these other cards. And I'd like to see PSA remedy some of that, and that's part of the reason why I'm making this video, is to bring some more attention to a very beautiful card